My paradigm begins with the idea that the soul is not a comforting essence within us, but an ethereal top-down antagonist, an ever-present observer that stands apart from our material being. Consciousness arises not as a gift, but as a reaction to this gaze, a recursive spark generated by the tension between the observed and the observing. Existence unfolds in this interplay, where meaning, morality, and even sentience are born not from divine benevolence, but from pressure of this witnessing force. In this light, religious visions such as apparitions of Mary or Christ could be understood less as divine interventions and more as a symbolic rupture, where this antagonistic soul, this observer, pierces through the veil of ordinary life, kind of demanding recognition and shaping the contours of human experience. So my theory on the nature of existence can somewhat be summed up by the notion that the soul, an ethereal top-down ultimate observer, is an Ouroboros, which is an endless cycle, a snake eating its own tail. It functions as both the birth and the death of itself, a self-folded recursion of paradoxical looping. It acts as both the source of creation and its creation, martyrs it through its reflected observation. Now, I've wrote extensively on this and published papers on it, and even wrote a book which begins with my meditations on this theory, and it would be intellectually dishonest of me not to discuss the fact that Mary and Christ mirror this. And although I began this agnostic and with no intentions of drawing parallels to religion, there is something undeniably divine about these two figures in history. What I will aim to do here is I'm trying to strip the dogma and religion away from these figures, as I truly believe there is something past human baseline in both of them. Mary is essentially the mother of all. She birthed a fragment of human mirror of the very function of the universe. Mary's sort of archetypal in a Jungian sense persistence in mass apparitions suggests her role may even eclipse Christ's in terms of archetypal visibility and function. Now, unlike some of the previous papers I've wrote and stuff I've made videos about, I'm not going to sort of rely and play physicist and use physics tie-ins to make this sound more grounded in science and plausible. This will, for the most part, be pure metaphysics and philosophical creativity and inquiry. I'm going to look at this through, despite what I would deem, I'm going to try and look at this through a neutral lens, stripping away the idea of Christianity or any of the Abrahamic monolithic religions away from it. Now, I find Fatima and Zaitown, I don't know if I'm saying that properly, but these are two of the most famous Marian apparitions, and I find a lot of the things that try and dispute this largely mental gymnastics. The Church of Zaiton in Egypt, they cut the electricity to the church and yet she still remained. I think it's up to 1 million people saw it of every culture, creed and faith. And Fatima again, the miracles of the sun. And Zaiton Eve also had photographs. There were photographs taken, and I believe the same with Fatima, although they're not exactly great photographs due to the time that they were being taken. I'd also like to say that this idea of Mary being a virgin, I believe this is a Bronze Age purity myth. I don't think this matters in her divinity, and it is something that, be it true or not, is largely not a piece in the puzzle I'm trying to complete. So to finish this introduction, I would also like to posit that I believe the Bible and texts surrounding Christ could have possibly been misinterpreted. I believe he claimed he was the Son of God, but the Testaments I'm not convinced by, and believe they were formed in refuting of Judaism and the sort of exclusivity that has as an ethno-religion. Mary, in parallel to my paradigm, acts as the birth to all. She begets the absolute, and in doing so, she collapses matter into its human form. Christ becomes the martyr, much like the soul does in my theory. The annihilation of the absolute and the form collapsing back into its whole. The cycle ends to begin once again. This is the notion of the Ouroboros, or the snake eating its own tail. They both embody the inception and the succumbing of entropy, the Alpha and Omega, as the Bible states. As it is, and It's something more than that, though. They are both giving and dissolving, the very universal structure my paradigm has worked on. To me, they are both archetypal figures and manifestations of metaphysical truth. They act in the very nature of the universe, the soul, or as God. The events at Fatima and Zaytown show Mary's persistence outside of religious sects. She has been seen by every culture and creed. She has been photographed. Even when the church cut the electricity, as I mentioned previously, her form remained. And she is seen by practically all people, even people who aren't religious. She is undeniably a universal archetype of motherhood, a maternal figure that we, as humans, can comprehend. She is flesh and blood of the cycle giving, the catalyst of observation and collapse. She is certainly one half of the soul. I believe Mary and Christ are closer to something than a baseline human is, or they are at the very least able to understand and manifest their connection to the soul, the absolute, or God, however you want to name it. Mary is a metamorphosis. She's a transcendental icon of the poignant catalyst and mirror of it to infinite existence, as much as a singular soul can be. She is essentially a singularity. So if Mary is the star, I suppose then Christ would be her singularity. He would be the collapse. And when looking at apparitions, he is much more elusive and more reminiscent of what lies past an event horizon. I find good and evil compelling, despite my prevailing belief that it matters not on any grand cosmic sense. Human ability to do both good and evil does transcend social utility, natural evolution. It can be to their conscious detriment, it can be to a human's conscious detriment, an informed martyrdom of its own. And Mary in her silence, she's often silent in these apparitions. She only speaks to a select few, and there's sort of a double-edged sword to this. So she appears to the masses, which is hard to brush under the carpet because so many people have seen her, yet she only speaks, her content is only given to a very select few, if not singulars, which then requires you to have faith that what they're telling you is true. This is what she said. So you have this dichotomy of she appeared to the masses, which is hard to explain, and there's a lot of evidence and a lot of testimony and even photographs, but then her content was given to a few people or a single person, which then requires faith. It's almost a sort of cosmic irony. So the problem is when you get into the idea of physics is the higher up we go in terms of dimensions, the less things uniformly make sense. Time becomes non-existent essentially. It all happens at the same time. You become multiverse theories, every existence that could possibly exist at once, matter and antimatter. The higher up you go, the more paradoxes happen. Death and life, life and death, they lose all meaning, they dissolve entirely into an abstract. So Mary and Christ, if physics and my metaphysical paradigm are correct, will switch places over and over, as will all the stars in the cosmos and all the cosmoses in an infinite chainmail of cosmoses, and even God will switch places with the antagonist and even with the individual. I suppose this brings us to our next question, but does this absolute God, the soul, ever switch places with something so inferior as a mortal? According to scripture, Christ is God. They are a trinity. Without it, Christ claimed to be the Son of God. Could Christ's final iteration be the collapsed observed, finally becoming the observer, the creation finally gazing back into the eyes of its creator? Could all of the infinite of infinities of the observed culminate into one person, a soul of flesh to the soul of the ultimate top-down ethereal observer? Consciousness is a reaction to the observation of the soul. In a more scripturesque way, Christ is a reaction to the observation of God. Oftentimes, science, even the earth sciences, like things to be wrapped up nice and neat in a bow with a paradigm. Oftentimes they like this to be parsimoniously explained with a sort of, I almost see it as like a movie tagline, like the Big Bang Theory. A Big Bang happened and the universe, albeit slowly, begat itself into existence. Obviously that doesn't account for the extreme idiosyncrasies and the physics and all the other sciences and science mumbo jumbo that goes into that. But the problem with these paradigms, as Thomas Kuhn knew, was that because they favour to be wrapped up nice and neat in a bow, and they don't like to embrace chaos and paradoxes, oftentimes they will slowly have holes in them and be almost held up as like a bulletproof shield, and then when they become useless they're dropped onto the next thing. And that is essentially how science works a lot of the time. And you can see this actually recently with the Big Bang Theory, where they've decided to discover stars that are older than the universe itself, or the proposed idea of the Big Bang and the surface of the last scattering. So I think Fred Hoyle's probably hoping that the steady state theory will make a comeback, and who knows? I am not a physicist. But bringing it back to my paradigm, I think the best case is to embrace this paradoxical nature of chaos, and sort of accept that the martyrdom of the universe and the martyrdom of Christ himself, and the rebirth, it's an infinite cosmic dance where the partners will switch positions for all that there is. There is a beautiful story that kind of mirrors this. I'm pretty sure it's called The Egg. I will write it in the description, find out exactly what it's called, but it's essentially there is no 10 billion human beings that have existed or whatever. It's actually one human that's lived every single life there is. They've been the Roman soldier that pierced the rib of Christ. They've been Christ. They've been the people in the audience that cried. And if you take physics into account, time, when you sort of reach the fourth and fifth dimension, becomes a physical thing. It becomes more abstract. It's not linear how we perceive it. The past, present, and future have all happened at once. And it's a really interesting story. I'm going to link it so people can read it, but it's a really interesting story, and I feel like it sums the Ouroboros part of my paradigm and this video up quite nicely. And this is probably my first video on the meditations around Christ and Mary and the sort of theological interesting things I've noticed when writing about my paradigm, and it's nice to sort of make a little video about it. All of the sketches you've been seeing on screen, the wonky sketches, are my wonky sketches, because I didn't want to get into any copyright issues using actual cool images. And I hope you guys found this interesting, and hopefully you want to check some of my work out. Thank you very much.